Today's lesson is about auxiliary verbs, also known as helping verbs. Knowing a little bit more about auxiliary verbs can help you with your English grammar and writing immensely. So what are auxiliary verbs? In this lesson, we're going to focus on do, be, and have. So let's have a look at the first auxiliary verb, do. Do exists in simple tenses. Do they live here? Be exists in continuous or progressive tenses. She is studying at the moment. Have exists in perfect tenses. He hasn't started the essay yet. There are two things to keep in mind when it comes to auxiliary verbs. Number one, these auxiliary verbs can be used as main verbs. For example, did he do it? So the main verb of that sentence is do. He isn't being sarcastic. They have had enough. The second point to keep in mind is the subject-verb agreement rule. What do we mean by this? For example, I am watching television. He is watching television. Or they are watching television. So basically the verb is going to change depending on the subject. Is it singular? Is it plural? Is it the first person, second person, and so on? Let's have a look at these two examples. Anthony is going to Valletta this afternoon. So Anthony is singular. We need to use the singular form of the verb is, and it's the third person. But they are going to Valletta this afternoon. So we need to use the plural verb form because we have a plural subject. Be very careful because this is a common mistake. For example, if we say she have to do it, that's incorrect. Why? Because we need to use the third person singular. She has to do it. She don't have to do it. That's also incorrect. The third person would be does. So in the negative, she doesn't have to do it. Let's have a look at how to form these auxiliary verbs. We're going to start with be in the present form. What we really need to keep in mind is the third person singular. The third person singular, he or she, is different from the rest of the personal pronouns. So for example, I am, you are, he is, we are, you are, and they are. The second auxiliary verb, do. I do, you do. The third person, he or she, does. We, you, they, do. And same with the third auxiliary verb, have. I, you, have. He or she has. We, you, and they have. Let's look at these auxiliary verbs in the past form. Let's start with be. I was, you were, he or she was, we, you, and they were. With do and with have, they remain the same with all the personal pronouns. So I did, you did, he did, we did, you did, and they did. With have, we would say I had, you had, he, she, we, you, and they had. They remain the same. Now let's look at the future form. In the future, we would use will plus the auxiliary verb in the base form. So for example, we would say I will be, you will be, he, she, we, you will be, and they will be. It remains the same throughout. Same with do and have. So I will do, you will do, they will have. It remains the same throughout. Okay, so let's have a closer look at these auxiliary verbs. Let's start with do. As we said before, do is the auxiliary verb that is used in simple tenses in English. So we use do or does in the present tense, did in the past tense, will plus do in future forms. In the negative, we would say don't or do not, doesn't or does not, and didn't in the past or did not. These are some example sentences. We play basketball on Fridays. Do they know about it? He doesn't like it. Do not touch the appliance or its plug with wet or damp hands when the appliance is plugged in. I'll do it later. Now think a bit about these sentences. The subject-verb agreement rules look at how the verb form changes depending on the subject, the use of contractions, the abbreviated or short form. So in the negative, we would say doesn't or does not, and given the third person he, we used does, not do. But in the second sentence, we said do they know about it? Not does they, but do they know about it? That's the subject-verb agreement rules that we've just talked about. The fourth instruction, a kettle, how to use a kettle, so that's why it tends to be more formal. We have the full form, do not touch, not don't. In positive sentences, we don't need to use the verb do. We do play basketball on Fridays. We can just say, we play basketball on Fridays. But if we are going to use do, that is usually used for emphasis, to add emphasis. So for example, if your mother comes in and she sees you sitting down on the sofa with your friends watching television and asks you, don't you play basketball on Fridays? What are you doing here? And you say, yes, we do. Of course we do play basketball. But today's session is cancelled. So we use the auxiliary verb do in a positive sentence to add emphasis. In the negative, of course, we need to use the auxiliary verb in its negative form. So we don't play basketball on Saturdays, but we play basketball on Fridays. The auxiliary verb be is used in progressive or continuous tenses. So we would say am, are, or is in the present, was or were in the past progressive tense, and will plus be for future forms. So the main verb is in the ing form, and the be is helping out the main verb. Remember, an auxiliary verb is a helping verb. It's helping the main verb of the sentence. Let's have a look at these examples. They are having a drink at the pub. Is he not bringing the guitar? Or we can say, isn't he bringing the guitar? It isn't raining at the moment. He will be flying at 2. Will you be going to school today? Let's look at the auxiliary verb be in the passive tense. He was given a lot of work to do. So in this example, the be verb is used with the past participle form of the main verb give. He was given. Lastly, have. Have is the auxiliary verb used in the present perfect tenses. In the future form, we use the infinitive form only have with will or going to. I will have or I'm going to have. In the present perfect tense, your main verb, again, as always, is in the past participle form. Let's look at some examples with have. He hasn't slept yet. We have tried it several times. Have you done it? We will have finished by 2. The electric car has been created to protect the environment. That's an example of an auxiliary verb in the present perfect passive. So again, look at the subject-verb agreement, how the verb changes with he and with have, how it's used in the negative, the use of abbreviations, the contractions, and how it's used in the question form. So, how was this? This lesson is not finished yet. You can do a quick quiz to test your understanding of these imperative verbs. Remember, knowing a little bit more about auxiliary verbs will help you with your writing and grammar in English immensely. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.